Now for our fondant cake, the second fondant cake covering, we are going to start by applying our butter. We have already trimmed the cake. Now we want to apply our butter. I want you to know that the method I use in the first one is actually paneling method, but this time I am going to cover it direct. So after applying your butter, one thing you must know about this is to make sure that you scrape out everything. Scrape out almost all the butter you applied on the cake. Remember, the main aim of applying this butter is to hold down our fondant. Now when the butter is too much, it begins to wobble. After covering it, it begins to shake, it begins to feel movement. But when the butter is too small, that is just to hold the fondant, you'll notice that your fondant will be very firm. So use your scraper and scrape out everything that you have added on the cake, as the aim is just to create a wetness to hold your fondant down. Next, you roll out your fondant. This time around, if you must cover it once, as I want to do now, you must cover with a thick fondant, about half inch thickness, okay? So before you do the covering, you must clean the board very well. Now roll out your fondant. It has to be thick, don't forget. You don't have to make your fondant too flat. That's why in some cases people complain that their fondant top. And don't make it too wide. If you make it too wide, automatically it will pull the one on the up and it will begin to tear. If you want to cover your cake with fondant, I advise when you place your fondant, it shouldn't really reach the downside of the cake. That is with the thickness you have already rolled out. Just watch. You can see that the fondant is thick, but not too thick that you can't handle it. Now use your smoother and start, after it, sprinkle some flour. Then use your smoother and smoothen the top part of it first, and then with your hand hold down the mouth, the upper part of it, so that even if it wants to tear, with lapping it, for the fact that you've lapped it on the cake, it will not separate or divide again. Next, you begin to go down. Now what do? You open and press down. When you open, you press down. And why are you pressing there? You're pressing so that it will lap. And as you're doing this, you're shifting. It's not like you open it and press there and you expect everything to open. No, just watch. As I'm opening it, I am shifting it. Okay, watch. Are you seeing it? I'm shifting it so that it will create a space for the next one that will come in. Then sprinkle again your icing sugar and then begin to go ahead with your smoother this time, going from up to down to make sure everything is completely lapped. Now at this point I work a lot with my icing sugar. I don't use corn flour to cover my cake. I also don't use shortening to cover my cake. Shortening only can come in when I am sure that I've covered my cake and I want to design. Don't forget, shortening can disappoint you when you're using it with fondant. It has a way of weakening fondant. Once shortening enters your fondant, whenever you roll to cover, it will begin to have crack. So always learn to cover your fondant with your icing sugar. Don't forget. Now, after covering, the next thing you're going to do, you cut round. Remember, don't cut exactly at the body of the cake. Else, when you want to start making your sharp edge, it may be sliding down. Now push. Why am I pushing? I am pushing to make the surface, the top surface, to be equal. If you don't do this first, by the time you flip over your cake and create the sharp edge, the middle of it will protrude up and the sharp side will go down a little. So that's why before you flip, make sure that all the corners are the same height with the middle of your cake by pushing and smoothing. Now, this particular part is very vital. I can never flip my cake over without doing this, as this will help my cake to create a very leveled sharp edge. So next, you sprinkle some flour and then place your board on top and then flip over. Now still use your hand and apply a lot of icing sugar around that edge where you are going to be working now. Now with your curved part of the smoother, begin to work. Now remember, I am not going up to down. I'm only working almost at the downside, just to make sure everything touches the board. Now you can remove the board, as I have not been able to stick it yet. Then raise up all those extra that is remaining and continue working, because when it is open, the weight can begin to make it to slide down. Remember, I'm always working with my icing sugar. If you don't, sometimes the smoother can easily begin to stick on the body of the icing sugar, thereby creating a serious wound on it. And I am using the curved part of the smoother. There is a reason for that. That sharp side of the smoother, if you use it the way it is, if you are not careful, it will wound your cake. So always learn to use with that curved part to do your sharp edge. Now I'll do this, bringing it down all around. Then after that, I will now trim out the excess, and before you know it, it will give me a razor sharp edge. You know what I mean by razor sharp edge? Very sharp. And I'm using my very tiny knife to do this. Now after that, you can still sprinkle another icing sugar and use your smoother to go round. but carefully this time. Then next, you can see the side that you folded in. With the help of your smoother and your knife, you can now trim. Now when you are trimming, you have to trim it to a level so that what you trimmed out and the cake will be equal. Let the cake not be upper than the fondant you are trimming out, and let the fondant not be upper than the cake. Just make sure they are level. So you can see what I mean. You continue that way until everything is out. Make sure the fondant and your cake are the same in level. Now I'm using the smoother so that my knife will be able to work freely. Now after this, apply your buttercream, but be careful, let it not come out of the level, that is the round part of the cake, of the fondant. Place your board and then flip over again. So that is it. You can see how sharp it is. Just use your hand and remove all the dust that you accumulated when trying to flip over. And then work finally the downside of it. Next, we can now start with our designs. And what the first thing you do, you cover the board. You can as well decide to cover the entire board before you place your cake on top, but sometimes this method helps us to be more economical. So now with your water and your brush, or even your hand, just apply water. What I'm using right now is my hand, because I want to actually know the amount of water that I've touched the board. I don't want the water to be too runny. That's why I'm using my hand. I only needed to wet it a little. So now you begin to put round the belt you just cut out. I want to lift it up. If you don't want to, look, this is actually not necessary because the board is actually smaller than the turntable. But because I want you to see what I'm doing, that's why I'm doing this. You can push it to the mouth of your table to enable your knife go through. So, but as I'm working here and I'm pushing it out, I want you to see what I'm doing. I push it out, else my knife will not be able to go through, and I'm using the back of my knife in a slanty way. I am cutting out the excess. Next, apply some icing sugar on the body of the cake and then run around with your smoother to make sure everything is well lapped. Remember, I'm still using the curve part to do this. Now, when you are covering your fondant, you can have a dent on the fondant. As long as that dent can be overlooked, forget about it and cover. Just get your sharp edge. When you want to design, you can use your designs and cover that part. That is if it is not much. But if it is much, you cover it again. Repeat a second covering until you're able to get what you want. Now, this is actually a beginner's knowledge. This is how we started when we started cake making. To design your board, you can use any cutter to make these designs, but I am using my skewer. Skewer is all those suya stick, that's those chopstick they are using to put meat. A packet of it in the market is about 500 naira. Use it and go around your cake. Give it another unique design. But today now nobody does this anymore because it is an old method. Even though the method is quite a lovely one, but it has been overlooked because so many other designs are out. Mostly the plain ones where you don't have to decorate or design the board at all. Now I have placed my black, but I want to use the pink one to show you what I did there. I only rolled out my paste, and then using my pizza cutter, I created a wave running, going from the one end to the other. So now with your pizza cutter, anyone at all, even your knife can do this work. Begin with your wave. Just move around, just move anyhow, zigzag way, anyhow you want it to get this wave. That's exactly how I got the black. But here the black is wider than the pink because I want the pink to be on top of the black. Now roll. Now why am I rolling? I'm rolling to make it retain the shape before applying it. And for me to apply it, one thing you must know is if you are working with dark colors on cake, if you use water to gum whatever you want to gum, it will make your work very dirty. So what do? Just use your shortening. Apply your shortening generously, especially on the part where you are going to place the fondant. Now I'm working with black fondant. Remember, if I use my hand and touch black fondant with water, it will stain my hand. And when I want to hold the pink will get stained. But with your shortening, your hand, the pink, everything remains intact. So for you to get a neat covering and neat design, sometimes I advise, especially when it has to do with the base of the cake, always use your shortening to stick. But if what you are sticking is too heavy and it has to come at the upper side of the cake, please do not use shortening because it may slide down. But whatever design I'm going to be placing on this cake today, I am going to be using my shortening to do it. So you can see I've been able to go around. All I need to do now is to use my knife and merge it together, removing the excess. And after everything, I try pushing down, then I'll use my knife again to lap the down part very well on the body of the cake. can see what I'm doing with my knife. I'm pressing so that everything will be equal. The downside shouldn't shoot out more than the body. So next, I'm rolling out a fondant to cut out my polka dots using my small round cutter, because that's the next design I'll be placing on the cake now. And for me to place it, I also will use my shortening. Right now, I'm using my shortening to do the rolling. Remember, it is only here you can work with shortening. Don't use shortening to cover your cake. Don't use it to roll out a bigger fondant. It will destroy your fondant. Now pick them one by one and place, spacing them. Don't make it to be too close. When they are too close on a cake, it looks very rough and you will not like the end result. So I'm using my paper also to work. What I'm using here is just paper. I just tried to see if that will work there, but I noticed it won't work there. So I decided to take a smaller one to place. Now, the design that you are seeing on this cake is over. The next thing I'm going to be putting there, that is another design, is my bead, using my bead mold. That is a kind of bead chain, using my bead mold. But every other thing now is paper. A printed paper that I trimmed out and then I positioned with my shortening directly on the cake. But if you don't want to position directly, you can place the paper on top of a fondant, rolled out fondant, and trim it with the fondant. When you trim it, you now take it together and then place. It still makes your cake unique also. But it's just that will take you a little time than putting it together immediately or directly on your cake. So you can see I'm calculating, thinking the best place to put this, the best place for this other one to be. Now remember, as I told you in the other video, that your designs are in your hands. Anyhow you decide to design your cake will be beautiful, as long as it's beautiful in your eyes. Okay, so now what I'm doing is doing my calculation. Where can I put this? Where can I put that? That is simply allowed. At the end of the day, you come out with something unique and something beautiful, and customers will be happy at last. So now I have been able to put the paper on one side of the body, and I am working with my bead now, with my beading mold or beaded mold, whatever. So what I'm going to do is roll out my paste, put it inside the mold, the bead part, that is the necklace bead part, something like that. And then with my shortening, I should be able to put it in that mode, press it down, clean up so that it will be very neat, and then remove it straight to those wavy designs. I'm going to be using pink on the black one, and I'm going to be using white on the pink one. So this is what I am doing. Clean it up very well before you remove it, and then now you can see that for me to do this cake, I didn't use too much cutter. The highest cutter I used here is the round cutter and the bead mold. Okay, you can even do without them. Even the bead I placed there is not compulsory that you must put it. You can actually deliver your cake without putting the mold. And the next thing I did was to cut out another belt, get the names, that is, bring out the names using the mold, place it there, and then arrange it on top of the cake. So now I'm doing my finishing, which is my ribbon or my bling bling. All you need is your uhu gum. That's the uhu gum I'm using. Apply it on the bling bling or ribbon, whatever you decide to use, and then do your trimming. Make sure that everything is clean and your cake is ready to be delivered. Now that is it. You cut off the excess. Remember, something you must know on this cake: work with your shortening as long as design is concerned on a darker designs on cake. Don't forget that. Finally, you now use your steamer and steam to clean up any dust at all that may have been formed on the cake while working. And your cake is ready. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next class.